If you have your Bibles, open them to Ecclesiastes 4 and John 13. Any of you with your physical Bibles, do we have any Bible stuffers out there? Like you just like put things in it all the time? I accumulate things. I even have like a Father's Day card in here and I got all kinds of stuff. But I'm going to read two passages of scripture as we talk about community today. Who has loved our summer discipleship series? Anyone enjoying this? I personally loved it and going through it. It's cool because San Diego and Sacramento, we're going through this together. And we're going to talk about community. I want to read these two verses to you. So Ecclesiastes 4:9, a very familiar passage, says, "Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone?" John 13:34 says, this is Jesus speaking, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know you are my disciples, if you love one another." Does anyone out here like people watching? Like you go to the airport or just, it's really fun. There's a lot of colorful, interesting people out there. And if you watch people, if you're good at it, you can actually come up with very clear realities or knowing who people are just by watching them closely. Like, the couple that is newly married or just got together, you're like, they can't keep their hands off each other. It's like, it's obvious by their actions, those people are in love, right? Athletes, if you played a sport, you probably have the ability to pick out other people that played your sport. Like I'm a soccer player. I can just tell like, oh yeah, I see you, soccer player, head nod. You don't have to say anything, you just know. In San Diego, we have a lot of people that come over the summer for vacation, and it's very easy to spot the tourists. Like, oh, you're not a local. And there's just little things. So you kind of get the drift. And the reason I bring this up is Jesus says something specifically on this topic of discipleship. He says, if we love one another, like we're commanded to do this, but he says, by this, you'll know that you're my disciple. So as we talk about community or relationships, love obviously covers a wide range of topics, but it is absolutely a part of relationships and absolutely a part of community. And it's an indicator of whether or not you and I are a disciple is how we, not just what we say, how we live. It's a way that you can look at someone and say, oh, that person's a disciple of Jesus. By how you love, how you treat, how you walk and engage this topic of community. So we're going to talk about community today. And the Bible is very clear about the strengths, the benefits that come out of relationships and community. And when we are a part of it, what comes out of that. It's also, like we said, a significant part of the life of a disciple of Jesus. We've been going through this, whole summer, different aspects and components of what a disciple looks like or what's part of a disciple's life. And as we know in Matthew 4 and Luke 5, when Jesus called the disciples, the first disciples, to follow him, they became, a disciple is a follower of the one that they're learning, their master, their rabbi, their teacher. But more importantly, it's not just a follower, it's an imitator. A better way to describe a disciple is not just someone that follows the teachings or the ways of the one that they're being discipled by, but it's actually, do they look like them? This is why it's so important as we look at this, specifically in this area of community or relationships, is do we look like Jesus in a topic or an area like our relationships and community? Because there is a strength, there is a benefit that Jesus not only calls us to live out of this place, but actually comes through our life to other people. This is also kind of like Becky mentioned, this is a topic I'm really, really passionate about. And I'll share some stories in my own life, but I've seen the impact of what community can bring, not only for me, for an individual, but through my life to impact. I believe that kingdom community can transform cities, your workplace. Kingdom community, like a disciple, as we walk, if we get a hold of this, that your home, your friend group, your community group, your whatever you're doing can be impacted and dramatically changed by living this out. And community is, if you grew up in the church, like it's the Christian buzzword. What are you looking for? Just community. Jesus and community, like we all, if you go to church, hang out long enough, I guarantee you'll hear the word community. Here's the interesting though, we all use the same word, but it often means 20 different things. All the extroverts are like, I need like a big group of people. I want to know, community for the introvert is like just one person at a coffee shop, deep conversations. Like we say the same word, but we also have different expectations or things that we're looking for. It's what everyone wants, but few are willing to create. But there's a strength that comes from community that you cannot get on your own or you cannot get anywhere else. And the benefits go way deeper than just being known, even deeper than friendship. It's actually, and we're going to talk about this, it's a gift, it's a weapon, it's a tool and a source of strength that if you can get a hold of this, will dramatically impact your life and actually be a part of you stepping into the fullness of the destiny that God's created you for. And here's the thing I'll say, it is not complicated. Unfortunately, in the church, we make so many things way more complicated than it needs to be. Over 4th of July week or whatever, we drove from San Diego to Northern California to Lake Almanor. And my in-laws have a place there, so we were just hanging out, just needed some of that triple-digit weather and just was getting, too much nice, not hot weather. And so while we were there, I discovered something that I didn't know I was missing in my life, a golf cart parade. Let me tell you about this. So my girls, we were living, my in-laws live up there and they're, they hear there's this golf cart parade and I was very reluctant. I wasn't stoked. I wasn't into it. But my girl's like, Dad, we got to do this. So they decorated the golf cart, flags and just America, right, everywhere. And like, okay, we'll do this. And so I wasn't excited about this, but I'm a good dad. So I'm like, let's do this. So we pull up and there's hundreds of golf carts. I'm like, whoa, this is a big deal. And it just kept getting better and better. It's like I said, I didn't know I was missing this in my life. We start going and people are blasting music and they're so friendly and happy. I don't know any of these people. And then as we're driving, people just start throwing candy at us and like handing out popsicles and like drinks and treats. And I'm like, this is incredible. Like it just keeps getting better and better. It actually restored a little bit of my hope for humanity. I'm like driving around and random strangers are like, Happy 4th of July, here you go. I'm like, oh, thank you. And I felt like I just loved these people and I don't even know who they are. And about 2/3 of the way in, I'm like, God bless America. Like, this is amazing. I started just thinking through this. I was so impacted by this golf cart parade. As I'm looking around, I'm like, I don't know where these people live. I don't know any of their names or their stories, but I just started realizing like a lot of these people, are on complete different spectrums of the political, whatever political agenda or party they come from, socially. Like if you were to put everyone together, it would be an unlikely bunch. But in the midst of something as simple as just a golf cart parade, there was just kindness and like, it was beautiful. And the reason I share that with you is my hope is that you too would discover the joy of a golf cart parade. This is my new passion. It's my new mission. But it wasn't hard. It was like an announcement, golf carts show up, and then magic happened. It was beautiful. I say this because I think we often overcomplicate something like community. And we're going to get into this, some of the things that get in the way of this, but it's often the simple act of doing something has exponential return, but we still have to do something. And this is what we're going to talk about a little bit as we look at community. Here, what I'm going to kind of go after, my goal for us today, my goal for you is actually less about the message here today, as great as it's going to be. It's less about that. My hope and my prayer for you, for us, is that as we leave, we have a new perspective, not only on community, but what we're called to create and being a part of community. So we're going to look at two things. We're going to look at what gets in the way of community, this thing that we all want, but many of us, we think it's an event we go to and not realizing it's something we create. And then we're gonna look at how do we create it, all right? So the first thing is I'll just say is the things that get in the way, or some of the things that I would say that get in the way of community taking place are independence and loneliness. There's other things, but I'm going to talk about these two things. As Americans, we're really good at being independent. It's actually celebrated Independence Day, It's in the fabric of our country, independence from England. Like we have this thing, we have TV shows like The Lone Ranger, and we got John Wayne. God bless America. He mentors us in doing it on our own. There's just things in culture and society, and we actually celebrate many times unknowingly independence. Like we do it on our own. And as we're going to look at it, actually will get in the way of us walking in the thing or receiving and encountering the thing that we actually want ourselves. As we look at Jesus, he is the Son of God. As he came to earth, he modeled and called 12 people to be with him. He was God, like he's good, just in case you didn't know this. Like we need people, he's good. He actually doesn't need people. But he chose and modeled this life of calling 12 to be with him, right? And as we can see, I say this all the time. If you ever feel unqualified, discouraged about your own failures and struggles, just read the Gospels. The 12 disciples will give you a lot of hope that you're going to be okay, even if you messed up. But this is what Jesus modeled, and he called 12 to be with him, and it wasn't just Jesus. And I'll say this as well, the life of a disciple is not an individual sport. Jesus is the only way to salvation, but a lot of us use this phrase, and we've talked about this here before, it's just me and Jesus. And yet that's not anywhere in Scripture, because the second Jesus, who is the only way to God, you get born again, you come in and you get adopted, grafted, welcomed into a big, messy family. Emphasis on messy. You're part of this. Is what we're called and invited into. And nowhere in Scripture does it say that you don't need anyone else, or it's just you. The Bible's really clear, as we just read. We need other people. I want to read a quote to you. Ken Ira Groff said, "Without the discipline of community, solitude degenerates into self-absorption and isolation. Without the discipline of solitude, community degenerates into codependency and enmeshment. The community of faith is where we learn the language of love." One of the reasons that we can slip into or go to this place of independence is we view needing other people as weakness often. I mean, even Becky's story, radical generosity, sometimes it's hard for us to invite other people in or to receive from other people because it could feel like weakness. We don't want to share our struggles. We don't want to share our needs because that may look like or feel like we're being weak, when actually it's the opposite. It's strength, and it's how you get what you need. There's things in community you can't get alone, but it requires you to step out of independence and move into a place of being vulnerable, open, transparent. And the real reason we stick in independence is it's scary. We don't like how it feels. The thing that keeps us in independence often is pride, but it's not an arrogant pride like I'm too good for you, I don't need you. It's often coming from a place of insecurity, shame, fear. Because community, as beautiful as it is, relationships, as beautiful as they are, can be our greatest source of, joy, fun, peace, life, all that. But it's also some of our greatest sources of pain and hurt. And so it's real, right? But there's a counterfeit that John 10:10 says that Jesus said, "I came to bring life and life in the fullness. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy." There's a counterfeit, independence, loneliness, we'll talk about in a minute. And then there is a genuine kingdom community that was created. And anything that is worth the genuine, the authentic, will have a counterfeit. Yeah. Independence, isolation is that counterfeit. For whatever reason you're there. The other, like we talked about, is loneliness. And this is really a real thing that many, many struggle with. In this room alone, there are people here, you feel alone. You could be in a crowd of people. You could have, tons of friends and still feel alone. It's real. I was doing some research and reading a few articles, and there was a Harvard study. It came out on February 19th, 2021. It was on an epidemic of loneliness that is spreading across America. Carrie McDonald said that loneliness among Americans has been growing in recent years. A new report by the Harvard University researchers find that 30% of Americans are experiencing serious loneliness. And some groups, such as young adults and mothers with small children, are especially isolated. This was in 2021, which came out of, the last 3 years where that was crazy and people were especially isolated. But actually another study in May 12th, 2019, looked at the implications of loneliness, health implications or impacts on our life and workplace. It says this, loneliness, though extreme, this tragic story reflects the reality that many are suffering from loneliness. The New York Times featured a study on loneliness and deemed our society as experiencing a loneliness epidemic. In the workplace, loneliness decreases performance, affects creativity, reasoning, and decision-making. Moreover, loneliness and weak social connections, listen to this, are associated with a reduced lifespan, similar to someone smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So you could isolate or just, start chain smoking. Either way, there's going to be an impact on it. It's also associated with having a greater risk of reduced lifespan. For more than someone with obesity, loneliness is also linked to greater risks of heart disease, dementia, anxiety, and depression. We're gonna get happy here in a minute. Don't worry. We're gonna go up from here. A couple more quick stats. There's 300 million people. This is from the World Health Organization. 300 million people have depression in the world. 16.2 million adults have experienced a major depressive episode the last year. 10.3 million adults in the U.S. experienced an episode that resulted in severe impairment. This is real, you guys. In this room, there are people here that you've dealt with like depression, or you're dealing with depression or loneliness. And so I'm not here to minimize or just give like a cheap solution to this. I think it's really important that we, again, highlight this is not the way of the kingdom. The things we just read, this is not the byproduct and fruit of the Holy Spirit. It's real, but it doesn't originate and come from God. And when Jesus invites us into a place of walking in relationship and community, there is another reality with other results, and we have a choice. I'm not saying it's easy, we're gonna talk about this, but they are two different, distinct things. And it's important when we talk about something like community and the life of a disciple, like it is absolutely critical. We need it, but we were called to walk in it and create it. Many people long for community, but feel like they can never find it. You may have lost hope. I don't know what your story is full of. Maybe you've lost hope specifically in this topic. Again, my prayer as we end today is that you're gonna have a new paradigm and perspective into how you create community and actually the battle going on to keep you from the fullness of what God's called you to. And I'll say this, just in my own life, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this is I've lived in both spaces. From a very young age, like I can remember in high school, even beyond that, like I would struggle with feeling overlooked. I struggled with feeling left out. Like there were things that built into my own life, lies that absolutely would lead me to a place of loneliness, would lead me to a place to want to isolate. So when I talk about this today, one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it is I've lived in both spaces. And I've learned many times the hard way that what Jesus calls us to and offers us, we have a choice. We're not a victim. Community is not just reserved for the lucky few, the good looking, the extra talented, the people that everyone want to hang out with. As we're gonna see, community is something that doesn't just happen, it's created. And I wanna read a verse to you, because as we look at community, like as we look at these things that get in the way, the reality is the trap of the enemy is if we see community as just a program or an event, we actually miss the reality of how we get it. The first place we have to start when we look at community is that healthy community requires healthy people. It doesn't require perfect people, and it's not, as we know, community is not void of mess. But one of the biggest things that sabotages or hinders the community that we all want is that we look outward and we don't start by looking in. And this is what gets us to a place of becoming a victim. It's because everything's happening to me, and yet everywhere I go, there I am. Everywhere you go, there you are. Some of you lived in different cities. You've gone to different churches. You've had different neighborhoods. And there's this struggle that's going on in relationships. And it's so easy. And again, I'm not trying to be insensitive or there's no shame or condemnation. It's so easy to point and look outward at what other people aren't doing, what isn't happening, what you weren't invited to. And yet, there's a common denominator in every place you've gone, and it's you. And so to get the very thing you want, it's not that we don't look outward, but we have to start in the right place and get it in the right order. On a good day, we can control ourselves, and yet we try to control other people. When we start in a place of, if we want healthy community, if we want community, we have to get healthy first. It requires us to step into this place. This is why, like Daniel came up and was talking about JCSL, or we've got Sozo, and there's life groups, and there's tools and resources. We're like, hey, let's get healthy ourselves and grow so that we can be a part of not only creating, but experiencing and living in healthy community. Turn your Bibles to Matthew 7. A big hindrance in this journey of community is our expectations, disappointment, and like I said, looking in the wrong place or doing community by starting in the wrong place. This is a familiar passage in Matthew 7:1. It says this, do not judge or you too will be judged. In the same way you judge others, you'll be judged. With the measure you use it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. This is one of the big hindrance things. Is like we get in this place where we become victims because everything's happening to us. And again, it's real. But again, we can't control other people, but we can control us. So if we get healthy, we remove the things that we can remove, it actually allows us to see clearly and move into this place. We believe that community is not just something that happens, it's created. I told you, it's not a program, it's not an event. I don't know if you remember me telling you, I was a part of a golf cart parade. I like events. It was incredible. There's nothing wrong with events. There's nothing wrong with programs. The thing is they're a gateway and a tool to create community and relationship, but it has to start with us. Has to start with us. This is how Jesus lived. He called the 12 disciples to live with him. In Luke 6:31, one of the things that Jesus said, he said, do to others what you would have them do to you. The context of this is Luke 6:27. It says, but to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on the cheek, turn the other one also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you. If anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. Now, this is something I want you to get. If you can get a hold of this, it will radically change the way you see even hard things in relationship and community. What Jesus is saying here is the order and their priorities that we do for other people, what we would want them to do for us. There's two things I want to highlight in here. Number one, he starts with the hardest people. He says, love your enemies. Do good to those who mistreat you. You can think of enough people in your life or in community, people that have done that. But here's the thing, you can get a hold of this. Jesus is not calling you and me to anything he didn't do himself. Jesus modeled for us on the cross, beaten, wrongfully accused, stands he was unjust, he was murdered, but his last words are Father, one of his last words, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. If you can learn to get a hold of this and even bless your enemies, do good, release those who wrongfully treat you, it actually will move you from a place of powerless to powerful, from a victim to walking in the fullness of God. This is what he invites us to, but it again starts with us. It's not easy. It's a hard thing, but if we get a hold of this, it makes you unoffendable. Like if you can learn to release blessing, even to your enemy, do you know that it will set you up in your friends that you like? What are the things that derail, hinder, like break up community, hurt? people, things that go wrong. But if you can get in a place, and this is what Jesus is saying, we do for other people what we would want done for us. You know, one of the things that I've learned, again, the hard way, if I'm feeling discouraged, I'm feeling down, unseen, whatever it is, one of the first things I do, I grab my phone and I just start texting people. You're awesome. I believe in you. You're great. Like I just start giving what I need. When Jesus said, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, or if you give and it's given to you, we're not just talking about money. You need hope, give some hope to someone else. You feel unseen, you know what? You have a natural ability to see other people who feel unseen because you know what it feels like. If you can step into that and you give to them what you need, it comes back to you. It breaks you out of this place of I'm a victim, I don't know what to do, everything's happened to me. Like, you know what, this is community. I'm gonna step out of that. I see you. I'm gonna call out who you are. I'm gonna do the very thing that I wish other people would do for me. And I move myself from being a victim all the way to this place of, no, this is what I was created to do. But if we constantly just sit back and wait, we miss. Here's the second thing. When it's do unto others as you would have them do for you. Anyone here like get really excited about your birthday or Christmas? And you know, there you go, happy birthday. Hopefully it's coming up soon. Some people, we do this thing and it happens in relationships and community. We're like, you know, get me a gift, anything, you know, and it's like a test, right? I'm not gonna tell you what I want. And I have these high expectations of what you should do for me. Husbands, you know what I'm talking about, wives, it's like, and then, you know, more often than not, like you fail or it falls short. It's like, well, how did you not know that I wanted this, that, and that? Well, because you didn't tell me, you know. It'd be nice to know, like help a brother out here. But when we look at this thing, do for others as we want them to do for you, it goes really specifically in every relationship. If we're constantly sitting back, you know, we come to church like, well, I'll say hi to them if they say hi to me, you know. And, you know, maybe you're new here. Thanks for hanging out. We're glad you're here. But there's, you know, a lot of churches and, you know, we look at things, but we're looking at it through the wrong lens. We have to look at this thing that we're called to give and to release. You guys still alive? So how does a disciple create community? We're going to go through 5 really quick points, but I'll just say this. You know, a lot of us, I don't know if you have goals or bucket lists, like I want to go skydiving. I want to learn to play the guitar, like, or, you know, anyone have goals like that out there? The only way that you do that, or it's actually ever gonna happen is you do it. It's like, you know, how do you learn how to pray? Just start praying. This is the thing with community. The way that we're gonna learn this, and these are 5 really practical things I wanna look at, is you just have to begin to do it. So the first thing I wanna say is 1, pay attention to what you need. This is around the topic of community, or you're frustrated about. They're actually clues to what you have to be part of the solution or answer. Do you know that if you're frustrated specifically in the area of community, you know, this is what we do too. We kind of set people up like, we'll see how good you do, you know, like maybe at church or friends. We're like, it's like, again, this test of like, well, give it a shot, you know, like create what I need. And then, you know, if you get frustrated about something, do you know that frustration is connected to care? Don't hang out in frustration too long because it'll lead you somewhere you don't want to end up. But frustration is actually a clue to what you have part of the solution for. Because what you're frustrated about, other people are like, I don't care, you know. It's like which way you put the toilet paper, you know. Like you're frustrated about it because you care deeply on the way it should be, right? But many of us, we miss this and we just live in frustration and it leads to anger, disappointment, hurt. We don't realize that the very reason you're frustrated is because you care deeply about that, which means you probably have part of the solution for it. Here's the other thing. If you have a need, like I just need friends. Well, actually, that is a clue to what you're supposed to do and be a part of creating the solution to. The needs and the areas we're frustrated are actually clues, not the area that we're stuck in victim mode, everything happens. Like, oh, okay, here's a clue of what we're called to go after. The difference in being in or connected is not if you're invited, but if you initiate. Social media doesn't help. It's like, oh, yeah, wasn't invited to that. And, you know, they got recognized and I didn't. And it moves us to this place of victim instead of recognizing like, okay, what's the need? I would love to be seen, or what's the need? What's the area I'm frustrated about? You are part of the solution. You're not a victim. Here's number 2. Community isn't about getting, but giving. Community takes work. We were created with the desire to be known, to be connected, But community is not about consuming, it's about contributing. So back to this passage we read at the beginning, John 13, Jesus says, a new command I give you, love one another as I've loved you. By this, everyone will know that you're my disciples, if you love one another. It doesn't say if you receive love, the world will know you're my disciples. It doesn't say if you're included or seen, the world will know that you're my disciples. It says if we love each other, the world will know, which means it's not a consuming, it's a giving. Amen. So if you begin to give love, you begin to give what you need to other people, that is the indicator. It's not a consuming, it's a giving. Number 3, don't overlook who's already around you. This is huge because when we talk about community, we're always like, they're really great. I'd love to get to know them. Great, get to know them. But don't overlook the people that are around you. Anyone remember in high school, it's like if just that person was my friend, if I was a part of this group, and if they would just see how awesome I am, then everything would be better. We still do this today as adults. And there's nothing wrong with making new friends and meeting people, but if we're constantly looking for someone else to see us, to know us, we maybe often are neglecting the people already right around us. Who's God put in your life? They're there for a reason. Don't overlook them. Henry Nouwen said, your unique presence in your community is the way God wants you to be present to others. God doesn't require of you what is beyond your ability. Like the best thing you can do is be present, be yourself, and recognize who's already around you. Number 4, we need to have realistic expectations of others. I'm going to read another Henry Nouwen quote from his book, Turning My Mourning into Dancing. He said this, community then cannot grow out of loneliness, but comes when the person who begins to recognize his or her belovedness greets the belovedness of the other. The God alive in me greets the God resident in you. When people can cease having to be everything for us, we can accept the fact that they may still have a gift for us. They are partial reflections of the great love of God, but reflections nevertheless. We see that gift precisely, and only once we give up requiring that person to be everything, to be God, we see him or her as a limited expression of an unlimited God. Do you know that one of the things that gets in the way of our relationships is we put unrealistic expectations on other people? This is true in marriage. Your spouse can't and will never be able to replace what God is supposed to be in your life. And yet the people closest to us, we put the most unrealistic expectations on. We're setting them up for failure. We're setting ourselves up for failure. But there are people in our lives that do have strength, and if we see them for who they are, we can receive that strength, but not putting unrealistic expectations on them. And number 5, and Isaac, you can come on up. To create community, the community that we all want, that we all long for, it requires us just to start. It doesn't have to be perfect. We just got to do it. We go after it. Again, back to my own story. 2 years into Jesus Culture Sacramento, we had been down here in Sacramento for 3 years. We were still over at the Folsom High School. Things were going great, and I personally was getting burned, like all good things, burned out. I felt alone, and I had tons of friends. And like I said, you can be in a room of people, and people can know you, but you can still feel alone. And I did something, which this is, again, one of the ways that I learned. I just gathered some friends and said, hey, I got a group of guys. I'm like, hey, I need deeper community. I need to be known. Here's what I'm dealing with. Here's what I'm struggling with. And the second I did that, they're all like, yeah, me too. But it started with, out of my own need, just doing something. We started meeting twice a month. And it wasn't like an official group, whatever. It just came out of, I don't want to stay in this place. I share this with you. There was a girl in our church in San Diego. She had just moved from San Clemente to San Diego and didn't know anyone. I mean, going to a new church, starting a new job, moving to a new neighborhood, it's the worst because you come in, no one knows you. It's like junior high all over again. It's awkward. You're like, are they going to like me? I'm 44 and you're getting insecure about like, what do they think about me? We don't ever admit it, but we all go through it. And this girl, she's awesome. She was talking to me. She's also a singer-songwriter, and she wants to break into the music industry. And she was telling me, she's like, I feel alone. I don't know any people. I don't have any friends, which that's not fun. And she's like, I don't know what to do either because I can't get gigs. Like her genre is very specific. She's like, I have nowhere to play my music. And she was depressed. She was discouraged. And we were just talking about this whole thing, community is created. It was the coolest thing. She didn't stay in this place of victim. She just started these house concerts. And the first one that they did, there wasn't even a lot of people, but she started doing what she needed. And now it's called Bloom, and they do them all over, not just in San Diego, Southern California. And like I talked about her in church when we were talking about community, because we're going through the same series as you guys. And like all these people started cheering for her because everyone knows her, and she just became part of the answer, not only to what she needed, but now there's a whole bunch of other artists and people that were on the other side of her actually creating what she needed. You know, so many of us, we sit back and we're looking for community, but we're waiting for it. Like it's a movie that's gonna come out, or a program that we're gonna join, or a club that, you know, this is not a club that we're a part of. This is not a country club that you join to be a part of community. The church is not a country club. The biggest lie that the enemy would do is that if I show up and everything's done for me, my life will be better. That's not what you were created for. You are the church. When you know who you are as a son or a daughter and you step out and begin to walk in what God's put in your life, do you know that it is about you getting what you need, but that's not the end of the story. It's actually that your life, your yes, you not comparing and trying to be something that you're not, actually is part of transformation in your neighborhood, in your workplace, in your schools, in your families, in the Sacramento region. But it requires a different perspective. I'm telling you, the kingdom community of God is a part of transformation for your life, for my life, for people, but it's to demonstrate, like it says in John 13, by this, they'll know you're my disciples. It's not about consuming. I'll just tell you a couple more stories because I want to get some faith in you so that you can see differently your own life, your own needs, your own frustration. There's a girl, a young mom in San Diego. Her husband's in the Navy. He's been deployed, I think twice, and he's getting deployed again. They were new to the church from Texas, and I mean, she's a mom with just a little baby, and her husband's gone in a different country, deployed. And she was just talking to me about how alone she feels, and she just, you know, I'm not a mom, so I can't start a mom's group. That would be awkward. She didn't invite me, but she created what she needed. She started this mom's group, and all these other moms started coming. And it was at the end of her need and some of the greatest areas of loneliness, and her need actually led her into what she was created to do. And like all these moms are like, it's like the cool club, all the cool moms. They still haven't invited me. I'm really frustrated. There's another guy, he was new. He's a Brazilian, came from Florida to San Diego and needed some friends, just started inviting people to surf. I was talking to Daniel Giles this weekend. I don't know if you know this, here at JC Sacramento, you have Life on Life groups. There's a bunch of awesome ones. And Daniel and his wife, Deborah, are like, hey, well, they've been here since the beginning with us. Like, we're gonna create a life group. Why? It's not complicated. It's as simple as a golf cart parade. I'm just gonna keep bringing it home with that. The Lord is in this, I'm telling you. But you create what you need. I want you guys to stand up, and we're gonna do a couple of things. I'll share one more story. There was a guy at our church who, he didn't like going to men's gatherings, and we became friends, and he just texted 10 other guys, and he's like, hey, you guys wanna meet once a month? All these people I'm sharing these stories of, none of them are on staff. It's no one's like job to, be this or that. They just, out of their own need, he just started texting 10 guys and like, let's get together once a month. Changing not only for him, but all these other guys, what community looked like. If we can recognize and see community is created, it doesn't just happen. And actually your need, your frustration, your area that there may be a little pain, if you can flip the script and recognize that the enemy wants to keep you in loneliness, isolation, victim mode, but actually that's the counterfeit. You were created. You're a secret weapon. You're the answer to someone else's prayer. Your life, even your weaknesses, are a part of helping other people encounter the love, the hope, the peace, the strength of God.